This was the first Chick-fil-A in the city. I went to it. And this is the one that Rahm Emanuel was talking about boycotting because of their religious beliefs, that they didn't believe in LGBTQ, and that they said they were going to put a ban on them opening up another restaurant in the city of Chicago. Well, I went and supported Chick-fil-A. So I was on the opposite side. You can ask Tim Mann. So I didn't stand for, I stood against. So it's interesting. You have this, and I purposely ate there when I did the CFP because we did our testing at Loyola. Yeah. We paid them to use their facilities to administer the CFP exam. That's where it was at Loyola. The CFA, they do at McCormick Center or the Stevens Center in Rosemont. The CFP, they do the testing at Loyola. So during the break between session 1 and session 2, I would go to Chick-fil-A in support of their stance. But I don't get it. Aren't they supporting this anymore and standing against? And I have no more allies that are on my side? And everybody's on their side? Before, there are places that I considered safe spaces that I could go and I'd be around people that were friends, that were supporting my point of view. Now it seems everybody supports their point of view, and I don't have any friends. So I'm wondering, and right here, this used to be the Orange Cafe, which I liked hanging out at because I worked for ING when I was with Financial Network. That was their broker-dealer. ING owned a broker-dealer. And FINIC, or Financial Network, was their broker-dealer. And I used to come down here and talk about the Orange accounts and hang out in the cafe. Now it's Capital One. So I don't know if Capital One took over the Orange accounts, because that brought in a lot of deposits for ING, high interest checking. And they had a product that was basically delivered it through their cafes that was a high interest checking that drove a lot of money into them. They have a bunch of mutual funds, and actually they have some of really good, and I think they have one mutual fund is one of the oldest mutual funds, and that fund is a close end, and I think that's one of the funds that have done the best in the history of the mutual fund industry. I think, I forget if it's them, but they have mutual funds, money markets, mutual funds, ING. So, and I think they're a foreign company. But anyways, I sit down here next to Loyola. Where is Loyola? It's law schools in the Gold Coast. Premium real estate. Very prestigious place to put a law school. And then you have Northwestern's law school right down the street. It's a pretty nice area to be in to go to law school. Both Loyola and Northwestern University. And then you have Northwestern's medical school, Feinberg, right here. And I used to go to their adult education program, which was right down here for Loyola. And I did religious studies at Loyola. Independent, I was a student at large. But again, I did religious study at Loyola. So here you have a big church right across the street. Huge. Do the students from here go there? Because Loyola doesn't have a church here. on this campus, but the students can go right across the street. And so I wonder if all these lawyers have a come to Jesus and they attend church. It's very convenient. It's right across the street. But again, this is the law school, and we used to do our CFP testing here in their test facility. And so, again, it brought money, the CFP board brought money to the institution by renting it out to administer the CFP exam, giving the law school money. It's another way for these institutions, educational institutions, to generate revenue. Just as my church, NCPC, it drove revenue through renting from the Jones Academy. And then it further provided revenue for urban ministries by moving in there, and it provided urban ministry revenue by renting from them, furthering urban ministries thing. So they supported the educational institution down here. They also supported urban ministry, which is an anti-violence organization. That's its core. It's not really a homeless. They have a men's and women's shelter, but it's towards anti-violence in the black community. Gun violence and all kinds of anti-violence in the black community. That's urban ministry. It's just like I was part of Can Win. And that's with a K, not a C, and that's about anti-violence in the Asian community. And both of them, they don't work together, but they should. And I don't know who does the anti-violence in the Hispanic or white communities or Arab communities. I was with two organizations, one that did it in the black community and one that did it in the Asian, but I don't know who does it in the Hispanic community, and I don't know who does it in the Arab community, and I don't know who does it in the white community. I've never run across these anti-violence in these other groups, so ethnic or racial groups. So I don't know who does it in these communities. So there's opportunity to open up organizations, and you can get literature or do some kind of collaboration between urban ministries and Can Win to get foundational, material and everything else. It needs to be tweaked, but they can help foster it in the Arab and Hispanic and white communities and Native American communities. So, but I'm not against those. I just haven't found any that do it. But also, I do believe in physical penalties. Hell is a physical penalty. It's a capital punishment. So make no mistake about it, I am not against capital punishment. And I grew up against violence, and I've always been against violence and only applied it when necessary. But I found out there is a necessity. And so you can't not apply it, as Gandhi found out as he was assassinated. And so, again, there's a balance between nonviolent and violence. And you have to find a equilibrium that creates a good structure within mankind. We used to talk about this with my Nobel laureate teacher who taught law at the University of Chicago, Gordon Tullock. And we used to talk about balancing the system of punishment and criminal crimes and trying to figure out the appropriate punishment for the crime to deter it, making sure the punishment was substantial enough to diminish the further participation in the criminal action. But I believe my videos and my stuff is important. You don't. They don't in Wheeling. I believe it's important. So we differ. So I believe I'm doing more good, and so I take the fine. So sometimes you can protest, like a sit-in, and you believe you're doing more good, and you take the fine. This is a trade-off. And you're figuring out how to do the appropriate trade-offs. So sometimes you do what do they call them? Illegal things, but in the right way. Gandhi did sit-ins. They were illegal, but he used them against the British effectively. So he did sit-ins. Illegal sit-ins, blocking things, just like when I was in Arizona. Now, this was illegal, but what happened in the morning and afternoon rush hour? The Native Americans would block half of Pima Road because traffic on Pima Road was two lanes, I think it was only, but one lane, it was on reservation land. The other land was on local government-owned land. And so the reservation, the Native Americans would just shut down their side of the highway or the road, Pima, forcing the government to come to the table. And it was about the casinos, but the whole point is they legally blocked the roadway during rush hour, not the rest of the day, only during the 2 hours of rush hour. And it was a main artery, and people got pissed. But they owned the land. The government was renting the land. Now, they were breaking the lease agreement, and they did. They were violating the lease agreement. But they blocked the road. It was on their land, and they blocked it. And the government, well, it brought them to the table, and they started negotiating how they were going to regulate the casinos. And they used it effectively. So sometimes you can use these things effectively, that the good outweighs the negativity. So sometimes you can break the law when it facilitates proper situations where all other channels have broken down, and the only remaining channel to get them to the table is some type of embargo, some type of deterrent, or I should say some type of slowdown, some type of action. So sometimes you can do this, but these are minor crimes. These are not major criminal actions. Unlike, Patty Hearst and robbing the bank with the Black Panthers. That is not what they did. So when they did it in a very minor. These were all misdemeanors, not felonies. So again, you can do misdemeanors, but you have to substantiate your position. And you can't just do a misdemeanor. You have to substantiate the whole case precedent and everything behind that you're trying to raise attention for this cause, and you have to be well documented, your stance of why you're doing it and what change are you trying to, and why you're not being heard and why you think you need to be heard. But those are ways to do it. So little sins are fine in that way. Major sins are not allowed. So it's a big difference. And so I'm wondering, with this church right here, it says, welcome to the Water Tower campus. And that's where I used to go for religious studies here at Loyola. And I wonder how it interacts with this church. And also I want to point out, We have 3 car dealerships now on Rush. We have Rivian, and we have Tesla, and then I think there's a third. But these 2 are 2 all-electric car dealerships. I still think Tesla should open up a hybrid. It would only make sense to open up a hybrid. No, they don't have to open up any gas, but the hybrid could be hydrogen fuel cells with traditional battery. You can open up a hybrid with hydrogen fuel cells and battery. Hybrid, battery, and diesel. Hybrid, battery, and gasoline. Hybrid, battery, and natural gas. So there's a lot of hybrids they can do with battery. And so that gives them a variety of selections, because places like Waste Management, they run on propane, right? They run on natural gas, I think. Maybe not propane, but either or. And now Tesla can do commercial vehicles. And now they can make a value proposition to Waste Management that you can use your natural gas, but how about if we offer you a hybrid vehicle for your, waste removal vehicles? And they would have to present why they would want to introduce a hybrid. Where's the value proposition to them? But there might be a good value proposition. So Rivian and Tesla can do this. And these are, supposedly higher end vehicles. And it fits in with the theme. Now they have higher end shopping. Oh, and the third is the exotic, the Bentley dealership and Aston Martin and all that at the exotic, the Perillo. So that's the third dealership. So there's 3 dealerships now on Rush Street going with the high-end jewelers, which makes sense. You have extremely high-end auto with high-end, because Tesla's, the first started at 70 to 80,000. Now the little one's about 30 or 40,000. So it still starts at a pretty high price point in comparison. And so it goes in with Dior, Christian Dior, or Dior, Prada, Cartier, Veronica Beard, SLY, or is it YLS? I forget. St. Lawrence, Ursa St. Lawrence. But you have Chanel, and this is Celine, but my mistake on Chanel. But you have these other, and so, and the funny thing is, when you got a foreign name, like they found out with Hyundai, which is not pronounced that way, it's Hyundai, but the whole point is that you have to inform the public how to pronounce the name, because people don't know how to pronounce the name. So you have to educate them, because it's a foreign name, like the wine Clos de Blanc. I said close to Blanc or something. You have to inform them because it's not pronounced the same. And so you have to teach them the enunciation or pronunciation when you enter a market. If you're going to use something that is non-traditional, you have to educate the public on how to properly pronunciate it, because if they don't and people correct them, people feel bad, and it diminishes that value relation that you're trying to build up, that warm fuzzy inside, because they stumble on the name. So you have to make sure that you're able to communicate the name effectively. So I worked in a lot of Italian restaurants and that, and when you don't know something, all you have to do is point at it. And what's this? And they'll tell you. That's their job, to know the names and tell you, all you have to do is point at it and ask them, what's this? Oh, that's whatever. And they'll tell you it. They'll pronounce it for you. You don't have to. So don't make a mistake. Just ask them, I'm not familiar with this name or this word, and how do you pronounce it? It's not ignorance. It's intelligence that you're not sure. And so, like a speaker, when they do these things at Miss Universe and that, you have to go over the names. Remember Dan Quayle with the potato? They made fun of him forever for a mispronunciation. And I thought he was a very good vice president here from, I think he's from the Midwest. But again, they made fun of him for that mistake all over Saturday Night Live, and it went on for years. And truly for years in the paper and comics and Saturday Night Live, comedians, they would always bring it back up again. And so, again, you're going to have to educate people if you have a name that doesn't roll off the tongue, like Mike. It's M-I-K-E, very simple. John, J-O-H-N or J-O-N. But those are things that are regularly known, that are very common sense. And if you have a name that's not common sense, well, you're going to have to figure out how to make a connection, and that means you have to do this. And that's why they press the button. Do you know they have those little miniature chips that you can put in magazines, and you press the button and it can pronounce the name for you? That's the great thing about chip memorization. It can go into a magazine and you can just press the button. Truly. Or if you want those little storybooks, they were bigger, the ones that have the flip, and then you press the button, it makes the sounds, or it has the lion roar. Truly. Or you hear the ocean waves. Well, now they're so small with miniaturization that you can put them into a magazine. You might even put them into a newspaper. Like, you press the button in the sports section and it says, go! Now, he was famous for this, the Hispanic announcer, for doing that. Go! And he became famous for his telecast. Every time there was a goal in soccer, he would shout out, go! Like Michael Buffer, ready to rumble! Howard Cosell, had his. But again, these made these people famous. They had this certain thing that they did, like, I think Jack Brickhouse, back, it's a home run. I think he said that, back. And Harry Carey, holy cow! He crushed that ball. King Kong Kingman, Dave Kingman. They used to have a song about King Kong Kingman, Dave Kingman. And then they had a song about Jody Davis, the king of the mountain, the catcher for the Cubs. And that's what made the Bears so catchy, because they had the Refrigerator, Perry, and they had these nicknames that the public really liked. Like Walter Payton was named Sweetness, Mongo McMichael, and many others. They had these names, and the Punky QB, McMahon. And so these things caught on, and it was trendy. And these things made them very popular. Like you have Domino's Pizza, and they have to figure out how to make the name something that people feel warm fuzzy about. Like Coke, it does the Santa Claus, it does the polar bear. It really emphasizes warm fuzzies. They do the Christmas cans, and they really drive warm fuzziness. They want you to think Coke, and when you have a Coke, it means life. I grew up drinking Coca-Cola, Diet Coke, because my mom drank Diet Coke. So when I say you pick up things from your parents, well, you do. My mom, she was always watching her weight, so she had Diet ice cream, Diet Coke, and Diet products. And so I picked up drinking Diet Coca-Cola from my mom. My friend Michael Kang, he was a big Diet Coke drinker as well. And so, again, you pick up these things from the people around you. They rub on you, you rub on them, but you want good things. That's why you watch out who you're affiliated with. And that's why when I got into the relationship with Jennifer, I noted all the bad things in my sister's marriage, in my brother's marriage, in my other brother's marriage, in my friends' marriages, my friends' dating relationships. And I made sure I didn't repeat any of their negativity, and I only did positivity. So all their misdeeds, that's why you have the Bible. It's showing you all the misdeeds so you don't step in it. The point is you're supposed to be gaining wisdom by learning, and I learned, and I didn't repeat their mistakes in their relationship. In my relationship, truly, if she would be around, she could tell that it was incredibly strong and was getting stronger, but people can destroy you from the outside. And you learn from my relationship, even when it's incredibly strong, you have to insulate the relationship better, because people can really damage something that's incredibly beautiful. And you don't want them to damage something that is incredibly beautiful. And so you have to insulate it. And that's what I learned. And I'll never make that mistake again, allowing the outside demons to destroy my relationship if I ever get into one, which I hope one day with a girl, that I'm not going to make the same mistakes. And that's why I told any girl that I dated, if you could tell me the truth of where things went wrong, truly, then I can know, and then next time I'm not going to repeat those mistakes. I need to learn from my issues. And so I used to ask them, just tell me the truth. I want the truth. If it was bad in the bedroom, if my penis is too small, I don't care. I want to know. So next time I'm in a relationship and I get intimate with a girl, and if it's not satisfying enough, maybe I need to find another girl. Or I need to turn to other techniques of pleasure. So if I can't satisfy him with my number one, maybe I satisfy him with oral. And so just because you have a deficiency in one area, you don't have a deficiency like Gene Simmons used to talk about his long tongue and referred to giving women oral sex. Indirectly, but directly, you understood what he meant. So, again, the whole point is you have to figure out how to overcome your deficiency. And if you have something that can be harmful because it's too substantial, then you have to figure out how you work around that issue, where it's just too big. So, again, it doesn't work. And if it's going to work, then you have to figure out, how can we resolve this issue? Truly. So there's some ways leaning things out. Truly, too thick or too long, there may be ways to change. You have to talk to a urologist, but also it works the same way with females, as I found out. Some have looser, some have tighter. It's not all the same. Just as men differ, women differ. Their number ones are bigger or smaller. And so, hence, men get the complex, but women have the same issue. So it's both of you having the issue, and you have to figure out, okay, well, how do we work around this if we're going to make it work? But the point is, you have challenges, and if it means so much, you're willing to overcome the challenges, and that's what the Bible looks for. If heaven means so much for you, then you'll overcome the challenges. And that's what it looks for with the LGBTQ. And it looks for it with the mentally ill and the disabled and other people. It might be financial problems. It might be anger management. Whatever it is, the Bible is watching to see if you're willing to work on your issues to overcome them. Just like with a corporation, or you have bad relationships with employees. How do I minimize this? How do I overcome? I used to talk to Tina. She's a black girl. She works at a consulting firm. She has an issue with a white guy. And we worked through it. And we resolved it. I showed her how to do these things in positioning that would resolve the issue without causing the issue to blow up, but making the issue go away. And she repositioned herself, and she followed my guidance, and the white guy stopped doing it. And her issue went away. And she was very happy because it was a point of great frustration on her part. And so, again, working through things. And so God wants to see, is Israel overcoming its challenges with the Palestinians? Is Iraq going to solve its problem with Iran? Is Russia going to solve their problems with the Ukraine? And he's watching leadership. He's watching people. How do you solve the issue? It doesn't mean you have to like each other. You can set up things where you create these buffers, and that's what laws are. They're guardrails to minimize the possibility of friction. So like Bob Chin, who had a history of sexual harassment. What did happen? Basically moving him out of the kitchen. But he had problems in his relationship with his wife. It wasn't fulfilling. They really did have sexual problems. And in turn, he acted out. And I worked through another one of my clients who was Indian. She was having a problem with her husband and his inappropriate. And that's because the relationship between the two of them weren't sexually fulfilling. So what did I talk about? Going walking and walking together and exercising together and doing these things to increase your time in intimacy together, taking walks together. And they started walking together and talking and building up their relationship with each other again. Sometimes it's simply going out on walks. And Sonia, Rick. So sometimes it's just going out on walks and spending this time together, the two of you, and just walking and talking. And yes, sometimes holding hands, but I don't think they were holding hands, but they were having this long private talk where they're alone and they're walking and they're doing something that's healthy, generating positive vibes, and it was. And that positive vibes led to more loving feelings, and it led to a reuniting their relationship and solving his problem of wanting to stray, because the stray problem was the lack of intimacy. And men are very driven, and women have to understand this with menopause, and that your libido really plummets. And that means your desire for that intimacy, the guys, it isn't as much, and they still want it. And that's why you get these relationships that break off after menopause. There's lots of divorces, separation, and cheating after menopause. So one way, I tried to delay menopause. But either way, say it comes, you're going to have to deliver, and you're going to have to figure out ways to overcome your intimacy, your lack of desire, to create that desire to keep the marriage happy in the bedroom. So women have a greater challenge with that, even during pregnancy and after pregnancy, because the man doesn't get pregnant, and that means if the man's testicles don't shrink, that means testicles don't shrink, that means the testosterone usually is at a higher level, and they say if it shrinks, the man tends to be better this way, but it's their sexual desires going down. The baby is a threat to those intimacy. The pregnancy becomes a threat to the intimacy. And then afterwards, the baby becomes a challenge too, because you don't want in the mood. And so you have to figure out how to handle these challenges of desire. So not all men, their chemistry changes, and to prevent inappropriate sexual behavior, you're going to have to adjust with the intimacy. You're going to have to figure out how to work around and create the intimacy that you can't create because of the situation, say pregnancy or healing after pregnancy, so you can't have that. So you have to figure out other ways to provide that form of intimacy. And keeping the male satiated keeps the male from wanting to hurt the child. So again, women have this thing, and it's a dual role, because truly, just like a dog, I told you about it, I studied dogs. If you don't introduce the dog, and there was cases of the dog crawling into the crib at night, going in the crib, and then clamping down and killing the baby. And the dog snuck in the room while the dog waited for the owners to go to sleep and the baby to be in the bed. And they went out of the bedroom and snuck in the baby's bedroom, climbed in the crib, and killed the baby. Why? Jealousy. The baby wasn't integrated. You have to integrate it, because the dog doesn't know how to deal with neglect. And the dog will get jealous. Just like if you get a new girlfriend, or you're a man, or you get a new boyfriend, you have to integrate the dog, or the dog will feel jealous. Like my dog Cheney, it was Mark's dog, but I took care of him. He used to get jealous of Caroline and with Michael and so on. But the whole point is, you have to understand that they're going to get jealous. And you want to head that off by showing they're integrating, bringing the dog over to the stomach, petting the dog after the baby's born, having the child play and teaching the child not to pull on the dog. My dog, you could pull on him and everything, but still, again, you want to teach the child to be nice to the dog. Like, don't pull on mommy's hair, don't scratch mommy. Same thing with the dog. Don't pull on the dog's hair, don't scratch the dog. So, again, you have to do these things to quash the possibility of jealousy, to create this intimacy. So, again, you have to overcome these issues, and we have to understand these things so we can create effective bonding. And we don't do that, and these things need to be done within churches, within educational institutions, within businesses, to create effective chemistry so we can move forward positively. Because you want to do things and feed into the monster, and it's a highly competitive world, And countries are trying to do things to create better chemistry between their people so the country can be more efficient and to produce better economic outcomes so their people can live better lives. So unlike you in Japan, truly, jaywalking, 3 months. They want people, and then they did the anti-groping movement on the subway. And they're trying to solve these things to create better harmony in society so they can be more highly productive. So they're looking at doing this. Their laws are to solve problems, not to feed the criminal justice system or civil or anything else. They implement their job as government officials are to implement laws that are effective, that solve problems. And so they're not feeding one side or the other. If anything happens, that happens by people accidentally or on purposely violating the law. But they keep on trying to tweak it to create more harmonious society so they can have what? Better economic outcome. So they do this in the workplace, they do this outside of it, and they constantly are tweaking so they can constantly create a better society. And if we don't start doing that, we're going to have a serious problem where India and others are starting to catch on, India and China and that, are starting to catch on, and they're starting to do things to create more harmonious societies, better systems so they can move forward more effectively as a society, producing better economic income outcomes, producing more prosperity, giving their people better lives. So they're really working on trying to solve the problem, not looking to throw people under the bus, to solve the problem. And anyone that goes under the bus belongs under the bus. So as leadership, they're not doing any injustice. That person put themselves under the bus. You didn't put them under the bus. And so they're trying to solve the problem to create effective systems so society can move forward in more prosperity and harmony, not what you're doing. So they don't care about building that. If no one went to court ever in the criminal justice, they would be perfectly fine. They're looking to move towards zero. They're looking to maximize every other industry, not to maximize the prison system or the criminal justice or the civil lawsuit. They want to maximize business law, water rights law, air rights. Air rights are huge with buildings and everything. Procuring air rights, that's all legal stuff. Negotiating and all that, arbitration, mediation, you have to do all of that. There are so many other legal fields that are expanding incredibly fast. It's unbelievably. So lawyers just move into other fields like human resources. That compliance is expanding across the board. So that means I used to deal with lots of lawyers that went into human resources, that worked on creating better employee handbooks, better safety systems. Truly, they worked on creating better safety systems for the firm to bring down injuries. My family drew all these yellow lines and defined everything, and then we used to have these cleaning systems to clean the floor, to take the oil off because the machines have misters, and those misters release a little bit of oil, and it accumulates on the floors, and the floors can be slippery. And then we have oil dry we put down, and all these things trying. And then John bought demisters, trying to bring down the amount of mist being put off by the machine, to clean up the atmosphere in the shop, and many other things, constantly refining, constantly improving to bring effectiveness amongst the organization. So you look at this and you look at organizational efficiency leads to incredible profitability. And one way is to get rid of disharmony. That leads to very good organizational. And so you have to figure out how to grease the wheels to stop the squeaking. So effectively applying it to stop the friction so you can move forward in a positive manner. And here I'm in my old neighborhood, and when Starbucks opened, it wasn't here when I first moved in, and it opened. I had my own little private Starbucks, I used to call it. But it was awesome. It opened up right down next to my old building where I used to live, and I always lived on the third floor. So whether I was in Arizona, when I lived in Scottsdale, I lived on the third floor. When I was here, I lived on the third floor. And I didn't mind walking up the stairs. It caused exercise. Even when I didn't want to exercise, I always lived on the third floor, so I had to walk 3 floors up, 3 floors down, multiple times a day, carrying stuff up, carrying stuff down, forcing myself to exercise. Other people don't do that. I picked my apartment because I force myself to exercise whether I want to or not. And you have to understand, if you're lazy, then don't take the elevator. Live on the upper floors. Like I walk with Jimmy, and I live with him, and I used to have to walk up the stairs and down the stairs, forcing myself to exercise. Even when you don't want to, you have to figure out ways that you can't get around it. That you just have to do it. Just do it, like Nike says. So figure out ways that forces you to do the right thing. Even when you don't want to, it forces you. So I used to live on the third floor intentionally. John never knew this, but intentionally I picked all the third floors because I have to move up and down, and it causes me to have to exercise. So at points when I wasn't going to the gym as much, I was still moving up and down the stairwells. Now, the problem with Jen's building is you can't use the stairwells, and this is ridiculous in these high-rise buildings. They need to open up the stairwells and put key card systems and put cameras in the stairwells. Truly, put cameras in the stairwells so residents can walk up and down the stairwell if they choose to use the stairwell and don't want to use the elevator. You have to give them that option. Like my building, I was going to walk up and down, but you could only go down and you couldn't go up, and I couldn't get exercise. But I tried, so I started just walking down and taking the elevator back up. But again, they should allow this in buildings instead of locking it off. Put cameras in there, tell people and encourage them, take the stairs or take the elevator, your preference. And so this way, they could choose. Maybe they just take the stairs down, they take the elevator up, or they take the stairs up and they take the elevator down. Give them the choice. I don't care if this is a Sears Tower or John Hancock. If they want to walk to their office on the 90th floor, let them walk to the office on the 90th floor. So put up the security systems and allow them to be able to use these things. And this is the way my other client, who was female, we talked about it. What did she do? She just not take the elevator at her complex. She walked the stairs up and down. And then at work, she wouldn't take the elevator and she walked the stairs up and down. But she had to make accommodations with the security guard. But she was a female, and by doing this, she didn't need to go to the gym. She'd get in all her steps because when she went to lunch and come back from lunch and did other errands and go to the house and so on, she lost all this weight and she got in great shape and she looked awesome by just taking the stairs. So we don't allow this in office buildings and that, and they need to start this.